Hello there, and welcome to episode 4 of Winning the War with AEW and Ring of Honor. And today we're back on Dynamite, where we're asking a question with a very tough answer. Could you trust the devil himself? Let's get into the show. We're in Ector County Coliseum for today's show, and we kick things off with Bryan Danielson, who, after on Rampage got attacked by Kazuchika Okada after warning him to stay out of his way. So Danielson is cutting a promo on Okada and he's talking about the best wrestler in the world, people have said. The greatest match of all time, people have said. Well, that's a challenge I'm willing to take on. I will take you up on that challenge because I am the best wrestler in the world. I always have been. You just forgot. And now I'm going to take Okada off his pedestal. Gets a 63 rating and leads straight into our opening match, which thematically works perfectly because it's Bryan Danielson versus Rocky Romero, of course, a fellow Chaos member. And Bryan Danielson obviously picks up the victory, defeating Rocky Romero with the label lock. Goes just over 11 minutes, gives Danielson enough time to get good technical wrestling in, gives Rocky Romero enough time to not look like a complete chump. An 80 rating though for Danielson, a 42 for Rocky Romero, gets a 62 rating. We then get Toni Schiavone doing an in-ring promo, and it's Saraya and Britt Baker. And yes, this is the end segment where Saraya gets cleared. Except, she doesn't do the whole, you don't know how to make it because that's stupid. She plays on the whole, you haven't had to go through what I have. And plays up all of the negative things that happened in her life. Her drug addiction, her neck injuries, her ill-fated relationship with Alberto Del Rio. She talks about all of those things and she's like, you haven't had to go through that. You don't know what my struggle is. And Britt Baker comes back talking about her struggle of building the AEW Women's Division, not being given a chance. Gets a 71 rating. It's a good promo. They're both good promos. Schiavone underperformed, which is a little disappointing, but not too bad. We then get a tag team face-off as FTR, the Acclaimed with Daddy Ass, and Swerve in Our Glory. Basically, they're all just looking down at each other. And they're all talking about why they are the epitome of what tag team wrestling is. They all represent like 3 different branches of tag team wrestling. FTR are the tag team through and through. They've always been a tag team. Bowens and Caster are the undercarders who came together because they had a common vested interest. Swerve and Our Glory are the 2 major stars who have come together to try and make equal or better the sum of their parts. There is so much interesting storytelling. And yes, we are going to be building to a triple threat at Full Gear rather than just the singles match, because we're getting the Ass Boys out of this storyline. Billy Gunn's there. We know the Acclaimed beat the Ass Boys. They're done. The Ass Boys aren't needed anymore. Gets a 55 rating for a good little promo. Tag team action next as La Facción Ingobernables, Andrade El Idolo and Rush take on the Butcher and the Blade, and Andrade picks up the victory when he pins the Blade with the hammerlock DDT El Idolo. 66 for Andrade does give him the best performance of the match by a country mile. A 58 overall is pretty good for a mid-card tag team match. Andrade is a tough cookie to work with because in real life, obviously, he's turned out to be a bit of a dick. And that he basically just throws tantrums whenever he doesn't get his way in a company, which has happened multiple times now, so it's not even just AEW. But a 58 rating, because he's a great talent, I'm going to use him, because in game, I don't have to deal with him. I don't have to deal with the backstage politicking in this game as much. They're just numbers, which is brilliant. Jericho cuts a promo backstage. It's more of a vignette, basically, where he's gloating about his attack on the Briscoes and Jay Lethal and Spongy Dutt. He's mainly focusing on Jay Lethal and Jay Briscoe as the former Ring of Honor champions, the world champions, and he's just talking about how this just shows Ring of Honor was nothing before the Ring of Jericho. Gets a 78 rating. Good promo. Good singles match in the women's division as Jamie Hayter defeats Madison Rayne with the Falcon Arrow. Goes just over 10 minutes. Madison Rayne is a good hand to have around, put people over. Hayter and her have great chemistry, pretty good chemistry even. And that gives us a good rating, 44 for Hayter. And then we finally have the face-off. Toni Storm and Jamie Hayter. They face off, pretty much confirming at Full Gear that is going to be the match. Toni Storm versus Jamie Hayter. 47 rating though, not too shabby. Jungle Boy, Jack Perry. It's being interviewed by Tony Schiavone. And he challenges Luchasaurus for a cage match next week on Dynamite. That's going to be the main event of next week's Dynamite because I don't want to overload Full Gear. So some of these big matches are going to be paid off on Dynamite, which I think is what they should be doing rather than putting 20 odd matches on every pay-per-view. 49 rating though, not too bad. Hook quickly beats Colt Cabana, Red Rum, makes a defense of his FTW World title. We're sort of keeping the Hook plate spinning, not doing too much with him though. Gets a 44 rating. Moxley tells MJF that he doesn't trust him. Because this is what I was talking about in the story. This main event is going to be Jon Moxley having to team with MJF against the Firm. And Moxley openly says he doesn't trust MJF. Gets an 83 rating. And they obviously go off to make their separate entrances. And the match comes. And MJF and Jon Moxley defeat Ethan Page and W. Morrissey when Jon Moxley pins Ethan Page with the Death Rider. 75 for Moxley, 64 for MJF, 35 for Morrissey, 46 for Page. Not too shabby, not too grand. 63 overall, but it's the post-match angle which I'm talking about. So MJF and Moxley pick up the win. They've had to work together. They coexisted. But suddenly, MJF shoves Jon Moxley in the back, pushing him to the floor. It's supposed to look like a turn, but it's not. All of a sudden, Morrissey's boot goes into frame and smacks MJF where Moxley's head had just been. MJF had sacrificed his own body to save Jon Moxley from the big boot. Moxley gets up ready to fire and then notices MJF on the ground. Gets Morrissey out of the ring with a clothesline. And just stares at MJF on the ground, taken out by this big boot. And just looks pensive. And that is how we end Dynamite, with Moxley looking pensive. Gets an 80 rating. Gets a 70 overall though, so it's a pretty good show. I do think that is a killer angle to end the show. That whole segment of Moxley telling MJF that he doesn't trust him, all the way leading up to MJF saving Jon Moxley from an attack. I think that's a pretty strong asset. And I think that's a pretty good way to end Dynamite. And, you know what, I'm not going to put Dark in this episode because, honestly, I don't really care about Dark. It's going to be just some matches. There's no real storylines going on. But I'll let you know of the results potentially in the next episode. I'll see you guys then, though. Goodbye.